I ran. I ran into 3 walls. I couldn't see where I was going. It was pitch black. I started to stumble and I just kept running. I fell once. I got back up and I kept running. I kept running until I found the entrance. All I could hear was coughing. As soon as we got out, it went right up in flames. Coming off a hugely successful 1983, a new $3.8 million coaster was set to open in 1984, the Intamin bobsled coaster called Sarajevo Bobsled. This was their 9th coaster to open since the park debuted 10 years prior. This new model of coaster having cars not attached to the track, but rolling in a trough, supposed to mimic the bobsleds from the 1984 Winter Olympics in Sarajevo, Yugoslavia. 25 concerts were also planned for the summer, including the Charlie Daniels Band, Kool and the Gang, The Temptations, The Four Tops, and Ted Nugent. But when the season opened in early April, it still felt like winter. The park had a promotion where guests could get in free if they brought a snowball to the front gate, calling it Save a Snowball. That was expected to draw in 5,000 people to the park, and 25,000 people showed up. But all the fun and frivolity of the season all ended in one night. In the early evening of May 11th, a fire broke out at the haunted castle, and because of the wind, the fire spread so quickly that not everyone was able to escape. 8 teenagers were found, burned beyond recognition, trapped near the front of the haunted castle as the fire melted the steel and incinerated the wood around them, the flames shooting 100 feet in the air. 7 others were taken to the hospital for smoke inhalation. The park was closed by 8 p.m., 2 hours ahead of schedule, and guests were given tickets to come back another day. Despite the shocking tragedy on that Friday night, the park was open for business on Saturday, the area around the haunted castle being fenced off from the rest of the park, along with some rides nearby. But the gutted-out castle was still visible from different parts of the park. Some were turned off by the cavalier message that opening up the following day sent to the public, while others were looking for clues as to why this happened, and if anything could have been done to prevent it. The haunted castle debuted in 1979 during Hollow Weekends, originally called Haunted Castle Across the Moat, renamed just Haunted Castle before the 1984 season. It was basically a decorated series of 8 tractor trailers, those known to melt with ease. There was no sprinkler system, nor were they required. The haunted castle was also not subject to state inspection, having no mechanical parts. However, per the New Jersey Carnival Amusement Ride Advisory Board, Great Adventure does a superior job. They have one of the best internal inspection systems going. The fire inspector did visit the haunted castle in 1983, and despite not having sprinklers, it did have exit lights and fire extinguishers. The township fire department was in the process of doing their annual inspections, but hadn't gotten to the haunted castle yet. The park also executed a fire drill on April 1st. Despite trying to cover their bases, there were a lot of angry people in the aftermath. State Senator Frank Graves inspected the site, noticed no sprinklers or smoke detectors, and posed the question, who on God's earth would design such a fiasco? Everything in there I saw was wrong. One of the victim's parents spoke to the press following his funeral. No sprinkler system, no fire alarms, no emergency lights, no nothing. That doesn't add up to an accident. They killed him. They killed my boy. They'll pay. Believe you me, they'll pay plenty, and I don't mean money. We won't stop until they pay for this. Senator John Caulfield called the haunted castle out as being built illegally, and state laws banned trailers from walk-through amusements. I don't know how they got it there in the first place. As for the cause of the fire, an early report stated a lighter may have been responsible, used by a 14-year-old boy trying to see better in the dark, but the flame coming in contact with one of the foam rubber padded walls. Shortly after, Frank Graves introduced a resolution to investigate the fire, authorizing the panel to use full subpoena powers for their probe. Any violations would bring the case before a grand jury, and they would determine if park officials were responsible for their deaths. The families of the victims were also starting to file public and legal action against Great Adventure, a lawyer representing 4 of the 8 victims' families filing a $2.6 billion suit. that being for punitive and compensatory damages. With the dark cloud of tragedy, investigation, and future legal action hanging above their heads, Great Adventure marched on into the summer of 1984. They were forced to close their freefall after an accident occurred on the same ride at Great America in Gurnee, Illinois, the car going halfway up the elevator lift and crashing back down. The Americana Music Hall was closed in June following an inspection that found 19 fire-related building code violations, reopening with improvements 9 days later. There was no doubt, Great Adventure's reputation was in shambles. They saw attendance drop 19% by the end of June, expecting a full 500,000 visitor drop by the end of the year, and the park's public directions director admitted the way the situation was handled was not good. From the very beginning, it was not handled properly, and after a couple days, that snowballed. Authorities would not let the press onto the scene of the fire, and corporate lawyers warned against the park making statements. They admitted they emerged from the incident with a callous image. As the summer season came to a close, the grand jury issued criminal indictments for manslaughter on 2 park officials. David Paltzik, the current vice president and general manager, and Larry Cochran, the vice president and general manager when the Haunted Castle was built in 1978. They were able to enter a community service program to avoid trial. Still, the Six Flags Corporation and Great Adventure were on the hook for a manslaughter trial to begin in the spring. Before the 1985 season, Great Adventure released their new fire safety program, a $5.2 million system focusing on a computerized safety network that Six Flags said makes it the safest park in the nation. 17 miles of wire and water mains, over 2,000 acres of land, heat and smoke detectors, more exit lights and signs, all run from a computer command center that alerts security guards to the area. This initiative also saw the construction of the water tower, sporting the slogan, "We care about you." The park was hoping this would be a big step in repairing their image, ending up 17% down in attendance in 1984, from 3.3 million to 2.74 million. They would also offer guests a new ride, Looping Starship, a swinging ship that would go around 360 degrees. Six Flags had also purchased Marriott's Great America the year prior and gained access to the Warner Bros. Cartoon characters, retheming their kids section to Looney Tunes Land. Every ride getting a Looney Tunes retheme. On the last day of June, a stampede of people trying to get into the Great Arena for a New Edition concert caused 20 people to go to the hospital, the injuries ranging from minor bruises to a fractured elbow. At the time of this incident, 3 former employees of the Haunted Castle were testifying at the manslaughter trial, saying the attraction was plagued with safety problems. Six Flags and Great Adventure were saying the fire was actually an arson attack, trying to pin the fire on a 15-year-old boy only known as JR who had a history of setting 50 fires. After 8 weeks of testimony and 13 hours of deliberation, the jury found the corporations innocent of any criminal act in the deaths of the 8 teenagers. Frank Graves and the victims' families expressed their outrage over the verdict, but the civil suits were still pending, and by the end of the year, a $2.5 million settlement was reached with the first family, the first of several settlements handed out over the next few years. The park would also be robbed of $217,000 when a gunman entered the park's accounting office in the overnight hours, threatening the 5 employees and escaping with the previous day's receipts. The perpetrator turned out to be an ex-employee who was caught and charged the following year. In general, 1985 was a good year for Great Adventure, attendance rebounding 13% from 1984, still not matching the 1983 level of 3.3 million, but only 4% off the mark. Hoping to capitalize on this success, Great Adventure had a state-of-the-art brand new toy set to open in 1986.
Great Adventure would like you to experience the ultimate thrill. First, you'll drop 10 stories. Then hurtle forward into a 360-degree loop. And if that's not enough, you'll do it backward. Six Flags Great Adventure introduces the ultimate thrill, the new Ultra Twister. Once you ride it, you may never be the same. Ultra Twister, only at Great Adventure.
At the cost of $4 million, this roller coaster was designed and built by the Japanese company Togo. This was Ultra Twister, set right next to Rolling Thunder, and there was nothing conventional about this ride. It would have tracks surrounding the whole car, go up a 97-foot vertical lift, dive down at a near vertical angle, and go into 3 heartline rolls, the last 2 going backwards after hitting a switch track. There was nothing like it in North America. Great Adventure officials, including GM David Paltzik, went to Japan to ride the prototype and requested some modifications for this one, including designing restraints to fit larger guests. Great Adventure wanted to move the narrative back to what made the park so popular in the first place, but they had another setback at the end of March when 3 people were stabbed in front of the Liberty Fountain, a group of men trying to steal a gold chain off another man's neck. This sparked debate over the need for metal detectors, a step the park was trying to avoid. They said having to check every man, woman, and child trying to come into the park would hurt the experience and the image of the park. In the end, Great Adventure did not choose to take any more security measures after the attack. Great Adventure saw the crowds roll in that summer, fueled by their new coaster and concerts from Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, Tony Bennett, Kool and the Gang, and Menudo, also featuring shows from the Chinese acrobats. They didn't get back to the 3 million mark, but they came close and saw a 1% increase from 1985. They also enjoyed the benefits of their Twicket promotion, offering a free ticket with each paid ticket, allowing guests to come back again within a week, excluding Saturdays. The park pushed forward with another major investment for 1987, Splashwater Falls, a shoot-the-chutes water ride, taking riders up 45 feet, dropping them down at a 35-degree angle, ending with a massive splashdown. This would cost $2.3 million and hold as many as 120 passengers at a time. If guests were looking for the Matterhorn, that served as 13th and final season in 1986. At this point, tickets for the park and safari were set at $17.95 and parking was $3. When guests came into the park, they would be greeted by a 6-foot-tall, $350,000 robot, said to be the brother of Psycho, the robot in the movie Rocky IV. But once again, violence in the park reared its ugly head. On Easter Sunday, 3 separate incidents left 1 person shot and 2 people stabbed. The shooting occurred near the park entrance around 7 p.m. and the park was closed shortly after. Earlier, 1 person was stabbed in a robbery and another as a part of an argument. Park officials defended their security force, saying conflicts like this could happen anytime, anywhere. But this time, they couldn't just ignore it. They determined that checking people coming to the park was necessary, and the inconvenience up front would prevent major incidents later. They introduced handheld metal detectors at the front gate, stating the checks would later become random, but also banned knapsacks and tote bags. At the same time, Ballet Manufacturing was out as owner of Six Flags, Westray Capital beating out 5 other bidders and buying the company for $600 million. Great Adventure kicked off their summer season by opening Splashwater Falls, hosting a 17-hour dance party, and hosting the Chinese Golden Dragon acrobats and magicians of Taipei. But the park just could not shake its demons. In the afternoon of June 18th, a train departed the Light and Loop station, but a 19-year-old woman was not strapped in. Some reports said she was trying to board the ride as it was being dispatched. Other witnesses say the ride dispatched before she could get her harness on. Or her harness was already locked and she was sitting on the outside of it, and the ride operator never checked it. She fell out of the car and was rushed to the hospital, but was dead on arrival. The Department of Labor blamed the ride operators for dispatching without making sure every rider was secured. A month later, a man fractured his leg on the Sarajevo bobsleds. That time, a ride operator hit the wrong button and started the ride while he was still boarding. This seemed to be the breaking point for Great Adventure. It had been a miserable run of accidents and mishaps spanning over 3 years, and Six Flags even considered changing the name of the park, thinking that Great Adventure had too much of a negative connotation. That didn't happen, but they did undergo a major review of its ride operations. The Sarajevo bobsled would reopen 2 days later, now with an additional start button. By the end of the year, all the major rides would have a new control panel that was easier to use, and would require more than one operator to push a button before a ride would start. To prevent turnover, ride operators would get a raise and start at $3.70 an hour. It wasn't just about procedure, it was about management. Six Flags cleaned house late in the summer of 1987. Ray Williams came from Great America in Illinois and replaced the park president Donald Conway, leading a new team of managers. Because of the park's reputation, he came in with a safety-first focus. Right away, he terminated the sale of alcohol at the park, trying to create a family-friendly atmosphere and prevent drunken unruliness. There would be concerts, but no more rock concerts. After major incidents occurred on the previous 2 Easter Sundays, Williams declared the park would not open on Easter in 1988, and since the latest Easter incident, security had tripled. Williams hired ex-FBI coordinator Walter McDonald as the first VP of Public Safety. The park and Jackson Township Police would work together to put 2 officers on site during the weekends. Metal detectors would become a permanent installation at the front of the park. He would also hire J. Walter Thompson, a New York advertising agency, trying to restore the park's image and investing $2 million to do so. He also acknowledged that teenagers made up 62% of the park's revenue, but wanted to install attractions more focused on families. By the end of the year, 20 more full-time managers and administrators had been let go as part of the shakeup. Attendance dropped 30% to about 2 million in 1987 and needed a drastic turnaround. Going into 1988, Great Adventure spent $1.5 million renovating Looney Tunes Land and renaming it Bugs Bunny Land. They also reintroduced the child ticket. Anyone under 54 inches would pay $13.95, as the adult ticket rose $2 to $19.95. A petting zoo and sandbox would be replaced with new rides, including the Bugs Bunny Western Railroad, Elmer Fudd's Traffic Jam, and Pepe Le Pew's Pleasure Cruise. All these would be enclosed and open in the rain. There would also be 3 playground areas with 1.5 inches of foam padding. For teenagers and adults, they would add the Condor, a husk condor standing 90 feet tall and spinning around. The park would be losing 5 rides, including Calypso, Monster Spin, Paddle Boats, Fender Bender, and Tilt-A-Whirl. 3 days before opening day, Ray Williams took out a full-page ad in the newspaper, laying out his vision for the park, specifics on how things were going to change, hoping to inspire confidence in people, knowing it was not just business as usual. Right away, Great Adventure saw a 20% increase in pass sales, and people flooded to the park during its first week. Season passes would be $50 for adults and only $35 for kids. Or you could buy 2 days at any time during the season for $25. Later in the summer, kids could get in free with each paid adult ticket. The summer concert series would include Andy Williams, Sha-Na Na, the Oak Ridge Boys, Michael Bolton, Neil Sedaka, and the Osmonds. The new plan was working, and by Labor Day, attendance had spiked 20% over 1987. Park officials gave credit to attracting more families, but they did not forget about thrill seekers, and they proved it in 1989.
We didn't name Great Adventure's new ride. You did. The Great American Scream Machine.
At the price of a whopping $6.8 million, Great American Scream Machine was the biggest investment in the park's history, and the park was advertising it as the tallest and fastest looping coaster in the world. 173 feet tall, 55-degree bank drop, 68 miles an hour, loops of 136 feet, 107 feet, and 97 feet, flipping riders upside down 7 times over a 2.5-minute ride. It would be designed by Aerodynamics, the same company responsible for Runaway Mine Train and Lightning Loops. Aero was also in the works building the first coaster to pass the 200-foot mark, Magnum XL200 at Cedar Point, set to open at the same time as Scream Machine, as there was a renewed push to set new world records. This would come at the cost of the Sarajevo bobsled, that being dismantled and moved to Great America to open for the 1989 season, now known as Rolling Thunder. For those intimidated by the Scream Machine, the park was set for 25 concerts, a new show called The Stars of the USSR, a song and dance troupe of 24 entertainers making their US debut, and the Botanical Gardens, a nice walk-through area that would make up for the loss of Garden of Marvels, the miniature village that had been with the park since the start. At the end of the season, there would be an Oktoberfest event for 2 weeks, followed by Hollow Weekends in the 2 weeks leading up to Halloween. On the downside, one of Ray Williams' big initiatives to make the park safer would come to an end. After just 1 season, Jackson Township Police announced they would not be staffing the park annex, saying they just don't have the manpower. The park would have to rely on their 200 security officers to keep the park in order. That would be a challenge, especially on Memorial Day weekend, as 35,000 people flooded into the park and it was forced to shut its gates for 4 hours. Then, out of left field, Great Adventure would embark on a project to expand their horizons. They made a deal with a New York-based finance group to bring a baseball stadium to the park grounds. The next big project for the massive amount of land still available, set to take about 50 acres. The $6 million stadium would seat 8,500 people, with the possibility of expanding to 20,000, and had their sights on a AAA minor league team to play in central New Jersey, the leading untapped baseball market in the US at the time. Jackson Township was on board and even waived height restrictions to get the project off the ground. They were hoping to get the stadium built and a team to commit for the 1990 season, but that didn't happen and they couldn't move forward until they had a team to play in the stadium. Although this was a serious project and everyone was optimistic in the summer of 1989, the stadium project would never be realized. Offering something new for everyone, 1989 was a great year for Great Adventure, attendance running 18% ahead of 1988, but Ultra Twister would not be part of the park's success. That was closed for the entire season, construction crews very carefully dismantling the ride to send to another Six Flags park, that being Astroworld in Houston. This, like the Sarajevo bobsled, was part of the new Six Flags ride rotation program, where rides would spend a couple years at one park and then rotate to another park, cutting down on the cost of buying new rides, which was more expensive than relocating them. In return, Great Adventure would receive an intimate stand-up coaster that spent its first 3 seasons at Magic Mountain. It would start with a 90-foot drop through a 66-foot loop, going into a series of twists and turns on a compact plot. The main factor making this ride different was the riders standing 4 across throughout the ride. Park visitors were given the chance to name the new ride, deemed the Stand Up and Name It contest. They would fill out their choices at guest relations and in front of the construction site. The winning entry was Shockwave, using the same name it had at Magic Mountain. This would be built on the former site of the Garden of Marvels. For the kids, 1990 would mark the 50th birthday for Bugs Bunny, and the park celebrated with a 22-foot balloon at the front gate and a mural on their water tower. Six Flags had gained the rights to use the Looney Tunes characters after acquiring Marriott's Great America in 1984, and they were about to unlock a whole new cast of characters. Right after the season began, Time Warner bought a 19.5% interest in the Six Flags Corporation from Westray Capital, the deal totaling $19.5 million, having the opportunity to increase their stake to 50% if they put up $30.5 million more. Six Flags CEO Larry Cochran said that Time Warner's ownership would lead to expanded use of Warner cartoon characters, most notably DC Comics. There would be a whole slate of concerts set for the summer season, Donny Osmond and the Oak Ridge Boys returning, along with Wolfman Jack, Tommy Page, Belinda Carlisle, and others. Ray Williams noting that for the $23 admission price, you could spend a whole day at the park, drive through a safari, and see a concert for less than the average cost of most shows. Great Adventure was targeting a 4% increase for the year, up to 2.5 million visitors. The main point of contention in 1990 involved Jackson Township. They assessed Great Adventure at $110 million, while Great Adventure said it was only worth $50 million. They were also fighting against an entertainment tax that Jackson Township was trying to pass. That would raise the price of admission. Great Adventure was behind on their taxes, pending the assessment challenge in court, and that put their safari license in question, the township not known to approve requests for businesses whose taxes are not up to date. Some members of the committee stated they would like to pull their zoological park license, but the park had the right to withhold taxes due to the pending assessment case. They would resolve this out of court the following year with no major change to the tax rate, but costing Great Adventure $1 million in legal fees and Jackson Township $750,000. This tension was compounded by an all-too-familiar incident in early August, when a 19-year-old man fell from rolling thunder and was critically injured. It was around one of the turns, 50 feet off the ground and the train moving about 25 miles an hour. Eyewitnesses saying he was trying to stand up when he fell out. That led to a discussion about the restraint system, and in this case, the lap bar was viewed as not an actual restraint, just something to hold on to. Those bars would span across the car, used for both riders, and lock in a set position, commonly referred to as buzz bars. The lap bar was still locked in place when the train came back to the station, so no mechanical or operator error was found. It was chalked up to rider error. Despite the turmoil, attendance rose 5% and the township approved Adventure Rivers for the 1991 season, a new section of the park costing $4 million, spanning 15 acres and having 10 slides, fountains, waterfalls, and a play area for kids. Its theme would be the Great Rivers of the World, having an African Tower, Asian Tower, and North American Tower, and as part of this expansion, 2 other water rides would get river reefings. The Hydro Flume, then renamed Kodak Splashdown, was now Irrawaddy Riptide, and Roaring Rapids was now Congo Rapids. With Six Flags turning 30 in 1991, Great Adventure was offering free admission to anyone who could prove they were also turning 30 that year, and with the Gulf War starting in the Middle East, offered free admission to active military personnel and their families on opening weekend. Also, in mid-June, they would give out 10,000 tickets to New Jersey military bases for their Operation Desert Storm Appreciation Day, that featuring a parade and fireworks. As Adventure Rivers was gearing up for its grand summer debut, Great Adventure's Vice President of Operations was injured while testing one of the slides. Jerry Jordan was taken to the hospital with a compressed fracture in his back. There was no malfunction found on the ride, and Jordan was back to work 2 weeks later. Adventure Rivers would open on time, but the new season would not see the return of Condor. That was dismantled after the 1990 season and sent to Six Flags Great America. It would be replaced by remote-controlled boats. Also, for the kids, the mini golf course, Adventure Golf, would open with an 18-hole course. Later that summer, Time Warner joined 2 investment bankers, the Blackstone Group and Schroeder & Company, trying to buy Six Flags outright. They were offering $700 million. Six Flags was not in good shape, having $328 million in debt, having trouble making repayments, and putting Chapter 11 bankruptcy on the table. The prior year, the company brought in $431 million in revenues, but still lost over $25 million. Time Warner would gain a 50% stake, while the rest was split between the investment bankers. Time Warner's influence was felt right away, as they installed Six Flags TV in the ride queues, showing cartoons, trivia, and ads to people waiting in line and walking around the park. Time Warner was also responsible for the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves stunt show, based on the Warner Brothers film Robin Hood Prince of Thieves. Attendance jumped 20% and hit the 3 million mark once again. Going into 1992, the park would renew its Say Goodbye to Winter, Say Hello to Spring promotion they used in 1984, offering free admission to anyone who arrives with a 2-inch diameter snowball. Great Adventure was secretive about their new addition. Ray Williams said, "We're just not ready to talk about it until the timing's right." It was not a new ride, the first time in the park's history a new ride was not introduced. It turned out to be the Batman Stunt Show, another Time Warner influence, a 20-minute show set to take place 5 times a day, mirroring the Batman film that came out in 1989. Falls from buildings, flamboyant explosions, a $63,000 Batmobile that appears to drive itself around, Batman being shot from a smokestack of a chemical plant. This would take place in a 3,200-seat theater, taking the spot of Swiss Bob, which was closed after the 1991 season. Time Warner would also make its mark with the Nickelodeon Double Dare Live Tour and the Sports Illustrated Sports Festival. They would host an Oktoberfest event once again, but instead of Halloween weekends, Great Adventure would introduce the first Fright Fest, taking the Halloween experience to a new level. Despite not having a new ride, the Batman show was very popular, and attendance rose 8%. Time Warner was going all in on their IPs, especially playing on the popularity of their renewed Batman franchise, starring Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, Danny DeVito, and Michelle Pfeiffer, and they would bring a revolutionary new type of ride to this thriving park in Central Jersey. Thanks for watching episode 2 of this 5-part documentary. If you could drop a like and share this video with anyone who may be interested, I would really appreciate it. This is a massive project and I appreciate the support. I also want to again thank Tom from Great Adventure History and the late Harry Applegate for being so nice and supportive with the project. If you love Great Adventure and its history, check out their amazing website, that link's down below. Stay tuned next week for episode 3, as the next change of Six Flags ownership takes the investment level to absurd heights.